They mocked me at the company party for being quiet. Not in a playful way. Not in that harmless teasing colleagues sometimes do to fill the silence between clinking glasses and corporate small talk. No, this was sharp, deliberate, meant to cut. I was standing by the bar, nursing the same glass of ginger ale I'd been holding since I arrived, when Mark, my manager, my so-called mentor, raised his voice just loud enough for the crowd to turn toward us. "Careful, fellas," he called, flashing that easy grin that made people forgive him anything. "If you stand too close to Lucas, you might catch silence." The room cracked with laughter. Heads turned, glasses tilted. A few people clapped like it was the best joke they'd heard all night. I didn't laugh. I just smiled thinly, a polite curve of the mouth, and lowered my eyes like I was embarrassed instead of humiliated. My heart beat hard in my chest, not with anger, but with clarity. I was taking notes, not on paper, but in the quiet place where I stored everything I wasn't supposed to remember. Mark wove through the crowd toward me, shoulders loose, drink in hand, pretending to be everyone's favorite older brother. He clinked his glass against mine and leaned close enough for me to smell the expensive scotch on his breath. "Lighten up, kid," he murmured, his voice warm but edged. "You'll never get anywhere being a ghost." I smiled again, just as calm, just as small. But inside I thought, ghosts can walk through walls you don't even know are there. I didn't fight back. I never do, not out loud. Instead, I watched. I listened. I caught every sideways glance, every grin traded over my shoulder. I cataloged it the way I'd cataloged everything for months. The meetings where my work went missing only to reappear under someone else's name. The compliments Mark fed me in private only to undercut me in public the way he told me. "Stay in your lane, Lucas." Some people are made to lead, some to follow. I followed, or at least I let him think I did. The ballroom was dressed to impress. Gold lighting dripping from crystal chandeliers, servers gliding between clusters of executives in tailored suits. I felt the weight of every eye that flicked toward me and then away. I was useful, not memorable. Reliable, not respected. Later that night, when the music grew too loud and people were drunk enough to forget who might be listening, I heard them again. Mark stood near the coat rack with two other executives, laughing so hard his tie had come loose. "That kid'll never move up," he said, his voice easy and sure. "Doesn't have a voice. I mean, what's he gonna do? Buy the company?" They howled. One of them nearly dropped his drink, steadying himself on the wall. I buttoned my coat, slowly, deliberately, like I had all the time in the world. I didn't look at them as I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I just let their laughter chase me into the cold night air, where it lost its edge and turned into something else, something I could use. Their words didn't land like a wound. They landed like a map. The train ride home was quiet, the kind of quiet I'd always loved but never needed as much as I did in that moment. My reflection stared back at me in the window, pale under the fluorescent lights, eyes sharp in ways I'd never noticed. I asked myself a question I hadn't dared ask in years. What if they're wrong about me? I knew the company's numbers better than anyone. I'd built half of the financial models Mark used to impress the board, line by line, without fanfare. I knew the cracks forming in the walls they thought were solid. I knew how much money bled out through bad deals, how much debt they pretended not to see. And I knew something else, something no one there cared to ask about. I've been saving money quietly for years, investing carefully, learning patiently. While they spent their bonuses on vacations and new cars, I built something they didn't even see. As the train rocked past the city lights, I thought about the first time Mark shook my hand, all warmth and charm. "Stick with me, kid," he'd said. "I'll show you how to play the game." I had. I'd watched every move, and I realized now, he'd shown me more than he meant to. He'd shown me where the weak spots were. That night, I didn't make a promise to humiliate him. Humiliation was cheap. I made a promise to myself to never let another man decide my worth. Revenge wasn't the goal. Power was. Quiet, unshakable power. The kind you don't flash around at parties. The kind you use once, clean and sharp when the time is right. The train slowed, brakes squealing against the rails. I stepped onto the platform with my hands steady, my breath calm. A cold wind cut through my coat, but I barely felt it. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger fades. Resolve doesn't. As I walked home through the sleeping streets, I thought about what Mark said about ghosts. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was invisible to men like him. But ghosts have patience, and ghosts always find their way through walls. I unlocked my apartment, the old door creaking in protest. The room smelled faintly of paper and ink, the scent of printed financial reports stacked neatly on my desk. I poured myself a glass of water and stood there for a long time, letting the city hum outside my window. The laughter from the party still echoed in my ears, but now it sounded distant, almost fragile, like something I could break if I wanted to. I sat down, opened my notebook, and began writing names. Not just Mark's. Everyone who laughed. Everyone who looked away. Everyone who thought silence meant weakness. I wasn't planning revenge. I was planning a future. A future where I didn't need anyone's permission to speak. Where I wouldn't have to raise my voice to be heard. I closed the notebook and turned off the light. In the dark, I could still see the ballroom, the flash of gold, the smirk on Mark's face as he told me to lighten up. I whispered to myself, not as a threat, not even as a vow, just as a statement of fact. That night, I didn't make a promise to humiliate Mark. I made a promise to myself, to never let another man decide my worth. Revenge wasn't the goal. Power was. Quiet, unshakable power. The kind you don't flash around at parties. The kind you use once, clean and sharp, when the time is right. I didn't quit my job. I didn't confront anyone. Monday morning, I walked into the office with the same calm face, the same quiet nods, the same unremarkable suit. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the coffee machine sputtered its tired greeting as if nothing had happened. But I wasn't the same man who'd left the party Friday night. I had decided that silence would be my weapon, not my weakness. And so I kept my voice soft and my head low. People talk freely around ghosts. They show their hands, thinking no one's watching. Mark was in the break room when I came in, laughing with two senior analysts. "Lucas," he said in that half-mocking tone, clapping me on the back so hard the coffee in my hand almost spilled. "There's our man of mystery. Don't worry, kid. We'll get you to speak up one day." His grin was wide, but his eyes didn't even meet mine. He was already turning back to his audience before I could respond. I didn't give him the satisfaction of a reaction. I just smiled faintly and walked past, filing the moment away like another receipt in a ledger I intended to balance. Over the next year, I gathered information, not out of spite, but out of instinct. Patterns tell you who a man really is. And Mark's patterns were loud to anyone patient enough to listen. I noticed how he approved client dinners that were nothing more than long nights out with his friends. I noticed how travel budgets mysteriously expanded whenever he flew alone. I copied expense reports and emails quietly, storing them where no one would look. Not because I needed proof for a fight, but because these pieces fit into a picture I wasn't done drawing yet. There were moments that kept me steady. Flashbacks like slides in a carousel. My first week at the company, Mark's hand on my shoulder, that confident smile. "Stick with me, kid. I'll show you how to play the game." Back then, I believed him. I stayed late polishing his reports, fixing his numbers, watching him present my work as his own. I told myself it didn't matter who got the credit as long as the job got done. But after that party, I realized it mattered. Not because I needed applause, but because I needed leverage. At lunch, while others joked about sports and traded gossip, I read. Corporate acquisitions, leverage buyouts, the mechanics of quiet power. I spoke less and listened more, not just at the office, but in the places where real decisions happened. Small investor meetups, quiet dinners with men who didn't laugh at silence. I shook hands with people Mark didn't even know existed, people who smiled when they heard how carefully I'd been watching. The company itself was bleeding in ways most didn't notice. A failed product launch here, a shrinking client there. Nothing catastrophic yet, just enough to create the kind of nervous energy that makes boards listen to anyone promising stability. I learned to see those cracks not as problems, but as doors. Doors Mark didn't even know were opening. I began buying stock in small, careful amounts. Not enough to draw attention, just enough to feel the rhythm. Then more. Then more. I funneled everything through holding companies I'd formed back in college. when I was still dreaming about building something of my own. I wasn't rich, not yet. But patience compounds the same way money does. Mark never noticed. He was too busy laughing, too busy treating me like a timid subordinate, a man too careful to take a risk. "You're too careful, Lucas," he'd say in meetings, shaking his head with mock disappointment. "You'll never make a move." He'd say it lightly, like advice. The others would laugh, nodding, glancing at me as if to see whether I'd finally defend myself. I never did. I just smiled every time. I could see the story he told himself about me, that I was afraid, too timid to challenge him. But fear and discipline look the same to arrogant men. They never check which one it really is. So I kept waiting, watching, calculating. Every signature Mark scrawled without reading, every half-truth he told the board about projected growth, every careless dinner charge to the company card. I stored it all away. Not to expose him. Not yet. But because I understood now that information is currency, and I intended to be wealthy in every sense. The day I made my first significant purchase of shares, I sat alone in my apartment staring at the confirmation email glowing on my laptop screen. It wasn't enough to control anything yet, but it was a beginning, a seed, and seeds grow if you tend them quietly. I didn't toast to it. I didn't celebrate. I just closed the laptop and went back to work the next day like nothing had happened. The whispers continued. Mark's little jokes never stopped. His voice carried across the open office floor. "Lucas, do you ever say anything bold? Do you ever actually take a shot?" He laughed as he said it, but his words hit the others like instructions. This is how we treat him. And so they did. I let them. Patience, I reminded myself, is not the same thing as weakness. Patience is a blade sharpening in silence. And I had all the time in the world. Mark still made his jokes, still rolled his eyes when I spoke softly in meetings, still told me, "You're too careful, Lucas. You'll never make a move." I smiled every time. He thought I was afraid. But fear and discipline look the same to arrogant men. They never check which one it really is. 2 years later, the company hit a rough patch. You could feel in the air before the numbers even proved it, that sharp, nervous energy that creeps in hallways and meeting rooms when the people at the top stop pretending everything's fine. Orders slipped. Clients hesitated. And for the first time since I've been there, Mark stopped laughing. He panicked loudly. In meetings, his voice carried an edge it never used to have. Every sentence forced, brittle. "We need to move faster," he barked one morning, slamming a report onto the conference table so hard the pages fanned out across the wood. "Cut the dead weight. If we have to bend some rules, we'll bend them. I want to see green numbers on that next projection, or heads will roll." His face was red, his tie pulled loose like it was choking him. I sat at the far end of the table, taking notes I didn't need. When he caught my eye, he jabbed a finger in my direction. "Lucas, say something. You're too quiet. What's your plan to fix this?" The room turned toward me like they always did, waiting for me to stammer, waiting for him to smirk. I lifted my eyes, gave him the smallest smile, and said evenly, "I'll handle my part." He scoffed. "That's it? You'll handle your part?" He looked around the room for laughter, for confirmation that his voice still ruled this floor. A few nervous chuckles answered him. I kept my expression still, my pen moving across the page. He thought it was fear. He didn't notice it was control. By then, I'd acquired enough stock to matter. Not a majority, not yet, but enough to have quiet meetings in quiet places, far away from the glass walls of our office. Restaurants Mark had never heard of. Private rooms where the waiters knew when to leave and when to pour another drink. I met with men who spoke in low tones, men who didn't care about Mark's reputation or his easy grin. They cared about numbers, and the numbers told a story Mark couldn't see. The company was wounded but alive. It could be bought if someone moved quickly, if someone offered the board stability before things turned ugly. One evening, I sat across from an investor named Harold, an older man with silver hair and a voice like gravel. "You're young to be thinking about acquisitions," he said, swirling his glass of whiskey. "Most men your age just want a bigger office." "I don't want an office," I said. "I want control." Harold's eyes narrowed with interest. "And what are you planning to do with it, son?" I didn't answer right away. I let the silence hang, just long enough to make it clear I wasn't bluffing. Run the company the way it should have been run all along. Quietly. Profitably. He nodded once, slowly. Then you'd better be ready. Men like your boss, they don't take well to losing. I was ready, or at least I thought I was. The night before the final vote, I sat alone in my apartment, the city lights flickering through the blinds like restless ghosts. My desk was covered with papers, contracts, and stock certificates. Months of planning distilled into a single folder. I leaned back in my chair and wondered if I should walk away. I had enough to leave, enough to start fresh somewhere else, far from Mark and his sneer. But then I remember that party. Not just the words, but the laugh. The way his voice carried, the way the others joined in. Not because they were brave, but because cruelty is easy when someone else starts it. They hadn't just mocked me. They'd erased me. I realized this wasn't just about me. It was about every quiet man they'd ever underestimated, every shadow they'd ever dismissed. The deal closed faster than even I expected. Money moves quietly when you plan it right. Papers signed in private rooms. Wire transfers humming in the background like an engine waiting to roar. When the last signature was inked and my holding company officially took control, I didn't call anyone. I didn't pour a drink or tell a soul. I just went to bed. And the next morning, I walked into the office with the same calm face, the same silent nods. No announcement. No sudden change. No hint of the weight that had shifted overnight. The security guard waved me through the lobby like always. My coworkers glanced up from their screens as I passed. Mark's door was open, his voice sharp and impatient as he barked into his phone. I don't care how you spin it. Just give me something I can take to the board. He didn't know the board no longer belonged to him. I walked to my desk, set down my briefcase, and booted up my computer as if it were any other day. But beneath that still surface, I could feel the whole building trembling. Not from fear yet, but from change. A change no one saw coming. I just showed up the next morning, same calm face, same silent nods. They called an emergency meeting. The boardroom was cold that morning, the kind of sterile chill that seeps into your skin and keeps people tense. Outside the tall glass windows, the city was waking up, horns echoing faintly, sunlight bouncing off steel. Inside, men shuffled papers and whispered about numbers they didn't yet understand. The door swung open, and Mark strutted in late as usual, his cologne arriving half a second before he did. He slapped one of the executives on the back. "Hope someone brought coffee," he said with a grin, his voice too loud for the room. "If we're going to save this ship, I'll need at least 2 cups. Then he saw me sitting at the head of the table. He slowed, his smile flickering like a light bulb about to die. "Lucas, what are you doing here?" he asked, still trying to keep it playful, but his laugh cracked at the edges. I didn't bother standing. I just slid the papers across the polished surface, letting the heavy folder land with a soft thud. The signatures, the seal, the transfer of ownership, crisp and undeniable. "I bought the company," I said softly. My voice carried, not because it was loud, but because the room had gone silent enough to hear every breath. Mark blinked. You can't be serious." His hand hovered over the folder like it might bite him. "I am," I said, watching his face drain of color. "You once told me I'd never make a move. I just made one." For a long moment, no one spoke. You could hear the faint hum of the air conditioner, the scratch of someone shifting in their leather chair. One of the board members cleared his throat, looking at Mark, then at me, as if to confirm which of us now held the weight of the room. Mark forced a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. This is a joke, right?" he said, chuckling too fast. "Some kind of stunt." "No stun, iraplia." I folded my hands on the table and leaned back slightly, calm as still water. "Everything is legitimate. The board has already signed off. I own the controlling interest." The blood drained from his face completely. He sat down slowly, as if gravity had doubled in the last few seconds. I didn't fire him that day. That would have been too kind. Instead, I let him sit through the entire meeting while I let it, every agenda item reminding him that the ground beneath his feet no longer belonged to him. I spoke evenly, laying out plans to stabilize operations, to rebuild trust with clients, to correct the quiet bleeding that had nearly sunk us. When questions came, they came to me, not to him. Each time he tried to speak, he tripped over his own voice. "Lucas, you don't understand." He started once, but I cut him off gently. "I understand perfectly, Mark. Let's move on." After the meeting, he cornered me in the hallway, his tie hanging loose, his breath uneven. "How long have you been planning this?" he asked, his voice low but shaking. "A while," I said. "Long enough to do it right." His jaw tightened. "You think you can run this place? You think you're better than me?" I looked at him for a long moment. "No," I said finally. "I just think I'm not you." Over the next few weeks, I cleaned house carefully. Not loudly, not cruelly, just methodically. I reviewed every department, every contract, every questionable expense report. Mark's name appeared too many times in the wrong places. Trips labeled as client dinners with no clients present, invoices paid to companies that didn't exist. I didn't have to invent anything. I just had to show the board what was already there. One by one, his allies lost their footing. Some resigned quietly. Others were reassigned to positions where they couldn't do harm. Mark tried to hold on, showing up early, pretending to work late, calling me by sir in meetings as if respect could be manufactured overnight. But the board had no problem letting him go when I handed them a file. The last time I saw him was in the lobby. He stood near the glass doors, holding a cardboard box with his things. A framed photo, a few pins, the little trophies he'd bragged about for years. He wouldn't look at me. "Lucas," he muttered, his voice barely audible. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered how it felt to stand in that room, full of laughter, pretending I didn't hear them, pretending I didn't care. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't tell him off. I just extended my hand. "Good luck, Mark." He hesitated, then shook it, his grip limp and cold. He turned away without another word, pushing through the doors into the street like a man walking out of his own shadow. As I walked out of that building, my building now, I thought about what I'd gained. Not just control of the company, not just wealth. Idinat proof. Proof that silence isn't weakness, that patience isn't fear, that sometimes the ghost in the room isn't dead. He's just waiting for the right moment to walk through the wall. That sometimes the ghost in the room isn't dead. He's just waiting for the right moment to walk through the wall. Disclaimer: the story you just watched is fictional. It explores themes of misjudgment, underestimated power, and poetic justice in the workplace. This narrative aims to highlight the importance of substance over flash and to inspire confidence in those who are often overlooked.